Are you stressed and filled with anxiety like I am? Maybe in a bit of pain from that car accident you had a few years ago? Well, the sponsor of today's episode, Hempville CBD, has us covered. They have the highest quality products created by chemists and doctors. Hempville carries everything from CBD to THC dispensary grade without those despicable dispensary prices. Order your Delta 8, 9 edibles and vapes along with the THCA flower and get free shipping when you spend $50 or more at hempvillecbd.com. Check out the link in the description for more details.
Welcome to the Filmsteins, the double feature podcast. Join us as we unravel the interwoven experience of the continuous conversation of cinema. Take part in pairing movies with our cursed counterparts, movies that share DNA, or even pairing questionable duos by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Filmsteins. We offer tiers at the $1, $5, and $20 level, where the $5 tier will grant the ability to request films to further the discussion. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and get ready to join the 100-year conversation. This is the Filmsteins, where movies are more than just entertainment, they're an experience. And welcome back to another episode of Filmsteins. Thank you for tuning in today. I am joined today by my kaiju friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone.
You can join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for brand new episodes of the Filmsteins. Some recent episodes include If Beale Street Could Talk, Trolls Band Together, Brother Bear, The Holdovers, and A Christmas Carol, the 1951 one of the old ones. Not a good one, though. Not a good one.
Not a great one, no.
But today we are discussing another old movie from 1954, Ishirō Honda's Godzilla. The original to what started one of your favorite genres, giant monsters fighting each other or just destroying shit, right?
Yep.
This is kind of a funny movie. It's going to be funny to talk about, too, because it's a very pioneering film, right? We like to knock pioneering films down a peg or two pretty often here. And I haven't seen this film in a while, probably 20 years. And I believe this was your first time seeing it, right?
Yep.
So I'm glad I could share that with you. I'm glad we could share that moment. I'm happy to report, too, that this is a pretty okay film. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was my first time seeing this film. And before this, I had really only seen the 2014 Godzilla with Bryan Cranston and Shin Godzilla, which I thought it was a lot older than you told me it was 2016, so that's my bad, because he looks so derpy. How can it not be so old? And then the new Kong versus Godzilla.
America struck a very interesting chord with the recent series of Godzillas, and it's this, Planet of the Apes kind of Marvel style, mega blockbuster style movie, and it's, for better or worse, it's a very specific angle on Godzilla that is kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
They need to embrace what they have there, and that is the monster fighting kind of thing, and we'll see if they can figure that out in the future, I guess. But yeah, the Japanese Godzillas, as you'll come to learn as we watch some of these, they tend to be a little derpier looking. They're not. They for some reason they're very rounded in the face. They have beady eyes.
The eyes,
and they're kind of fat, and they have small arms. Their proportions are just weird, and especially these older ones, not a lot of special effects. It's all practical, and so it's gonna feel like there's a lot of wrestling matches taking place on screen, and that's one of the kind of charming things about the Japanese line of Godzilla films, even though there are many different eras of Godzilla, and Shin Godzilla being my favorite.
Yeah, I would like to see some Americanized versions of Godzilla or older Godzilla films, just to kind of see if they still have that kind of monster fighting genre and themes.
This movie lives in a funny space in my mind because I don't think it's a really great film like 12 Angry Men. That's going to be my go-to black and white film. And from the 50s, right? It may have come out the same year, actually, in 12 Angry Men, 1954.
I think it's 57.
Okay. But there's something captured here that I can't help but to just totally love. This movie lives in an interesting place in my mind because it's really not a great film. It feels like it could potentially be some kind of undergraduate, production with man in a suit, half the film, crushing cool-ass dioramas, but still just dioramas nonetheless, right? And not very, fleshed out in the way that broken building would kind of collapse. They're very box-like. There's not a lot. When the things are crushed, there's nothing in them. I don't know what to call that. There's just a cheapness there that you would definitely see in a student film, which is fine because it goes to show you that a strong level of drama and a strong kind of subtext of why can carry a film even as crude as this one, So this film is actually very watchable to me.
Yeah, I don't know if I completely agree with what you're saying because I think this is a pretty great movie. But I do see the cheapness, the derpiness, especially in those scenes when we have a toy helicopter colliding with a box building. Okay, I saw the switch from world perspective to okay, that clearly looked like a toy.
Yeah.
So I see that, but this movie is just so somber and so dark, and I think they do a phenomenal job that you can push all that aside because the acting's not super great. It's not the best performance. They're not the best performances.
But I will say the acting is much better than a lot of 50s American movies. It's really surprising, isn't it?
Yes.
This movie feels... I know Citizen Kane is one of the harbingers of bringing naturalism, so-called naturalism to the screen, but every early Japanese film I've seen brings... I wouldn't quite call it naturalism, but it is this very specific style of drama that's not theater, that we're kind of, or whatever. I don't know what to call that American way of acting either pre-Citizen Kane, but from A Christmas Carol we just watched and
To Kill a Mockingbird.
It's just what is that? Go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah. Towards the beginning of the film, we saw one of the guys getting hit with water. I think the water came on too strong and crashed, broke the window, and the water came in and he fell forward when the water clearly should have pushed him back.
Yeah.
And, kind of little performance things like that. I just hate to dock this film any points because of that. And even some of the editing is pretty rough. So you can find little pieces in the performances and the editing and the costumes and the set designs. But the story is just so beautifully done that it just elevates this movie so much for me.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And that's why it's kind of lives in a funny space in my mind because its story is cream of the crop.
Yes.
For me, there's some funny little things here and there, like the bubbles that dissolve organic tissue and stuff, but there's an element to that I like too, and we'll get to that. So it's just I can't help but to really appreciate this movie in some ways.
And now that we're here, 70 years later, however long it's been?
Next year,
okay. Yes. I can appreciate this movie way more for its pioneering and just the influence it has on not only, the 50 million Godzilla films that there are out there, but everything else it's influenced. So maybe I have a little bit of that in my appreciation for this film because I didn't really know what Godzilla was about. I had no idea it was a symbol for nuclear weapons. I had no idea from the American movies I've seen. So watching this classic, this original film, just really, I guess it just really speaks to me on a whole nother level.
It puts Godzilla in a really somber light, I think. And I was wondering if you were going to look into that, look into the greater picture of Godzilla, because I've always had that image of Godzilla in my mind. I don't know if I knew that before I even saw the first Godzilla or what, but it's just always kind of been there, and it's one reason I like Godzilla as a premise because of its origins and its inspiration. So it's just, I don't know, Godzilla's kind of special to me in that way since the very beginning. So I guess it's kind of funny to hear you say that you didn't really know.
Yeah, I had no idea. I thought Godzilla was just some prehistoric phenomena like King Kong.
And he becomes that. I think in one of the second era of Godzilla, during the fight scenes of Godzilla, like the fighting era, the King of Monsters era, I think is what they call it. He's a mutated iguana. We get to the origin of him. He's actually able to reproduce, but
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hate that. Well, I don't hate that. I wish I would have known his true origin before I was exposed to him just being a cool prehistoric monster like the Meg.
Yeah.
Nothing to it, no symbolic representation. He's just a badass.
I don't know if you want to get into it right now or not, but I've always had a little bit of a different view on Godzilla himself, in that Godzilla doesn't just represent kind of the age of nuclear weapons and uncertainty, but Godzilla represents this urgent necessity to conform to Western ideals. Japan has to deal with this problem that they have in their hands, Godzilla, which represents their tradition in the way that they used to be, because they're like catapulted into Western affairs after World War II immediately.
Wait, I mean, who wasn't though?
Well, they were especially isolated from the rest of the world, and then they sided with the Nazis, and then they had to deal with Western affairs. They weren't dealing with the Western affairs like they would, and commerce and kind of political attentions and stuff across the world, especially being so close to, or being between the US and Russia in some way. And so they had no idea what they were really getting themselves into. And so I think I've never really heard anyone else say it, I guess, quite like this, how I think about it. And I've thought about it for so many years. This is probably the first time I'm vocalizing it, actually. That Godzilla is this one step deeper than just being the thing that changed Japan forever, that nuclear disaster, that kind of wake-up call from the United States specifically, I guess. But it's this desire to kill the thing that allowed you to form a relationship with the enemy to begin with. And so you're not killing yourself, but you're killing everything that came before that allowed that situation to even happen. And Godzilla kind of represents that to me through his destructibility and his insistence on, being around. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I'm trying to picture that, if I got any of that from the film.
Because there's this real obsession in the film with tradition, in my mind. And Godzilla is that symbol, I guess. I think at one point on the beach, there's that when, one of those old guys, he's like, the young people the young people don't even believe in the stories and tradition about Godzilla anymore. And so there's this like self-awareness of, the older Japanese people seeing the younger Japanese people evolving maybe towards Western ideals anyways. And I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of grasping at straws, but it's the picture's kind of fleshed out in my mind. It's like the fallout left behind from Godzilla is being tracked constantly throughout the whole movie. All right, rightfully so, right? Radiation's deadly. He's contaminating all around where he walks, right? And is at. And when they are, tracking the radiation with the Geiger meters, it kind of rings to me that this Geiger meter is actually tracking the old tradition still left in Japan, and we're kind of still dealing with not necessarily problems, but the kind of old way of thinking, but just kind of small details to help flesh out that narrative in my mind.
Yeah, it seems like Godzilla can represent a lot of things, because in this film, he was also a symbol for science and scientific advancements.
Like being forced in the position of kind of accelerating in that way.
Well, and more along the lines of the consequences that science can have.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a taste of this with the doctor grandpa. I don't know his name, but he's very fascinated by Godzilla. We should study him, but he also knows that has consequences, just like the oxygen destroyer thing that gets invented, and the very clear consequences that could have. So, another step beyond the just nuclear weapon.
Answering the weapon with a weapon kind of thing.
Yeah.
I kind of like the older doctor's whole angle being this almost representation of the resistance to changing and wanting it to be or I guess resistance to abruptly changing and more so understanding our past and knowing kind of why it allowed us to side with the Nazis and kind of just understanding the demons within Japan and themselves. Even with, I guess, the oxygen destroyer guy, there's this weird incompetency within the science and political world where they're just kind of, they don't really have a game plan. I guess Shin Godzilla kind of explores that a little bit more, but in a bit more of a humans can accomplish anything if they put their mind to it kind of thing. Less so here. And I guess future Godzillas kind of run with that, where the chicken getting their head cut off and just running about and become kind of grapes to the big beasts at some point. Does that make sense? It's not a political problem. It's not a scientific problem, right? It's not a market economic problem, right? It's a cultural problem that requires just the evolution of a large body of people to just accept and move on from a thing. In this case, we do get an individual who kind of takes the mantle and does he does the do. He
does the deed.
He does the deed, but he also sacrifices his life in the way. He becomes basically a myth in the process because there's not an individual who can walk away from that. That just wouldn't symbolically make any sense, right? That there has to be some kind of sacrificial lamb in the mix because it's not a traditional problem, right? So we need a non-traditional solution.
Yeah.
And I like that. I guess just to be clear, I do like that in the film a lot, and that's half of why I think this movie is almost amazing.
Yeah, it definitely adds to that somber tone.
Yeah.
It's almost like this pit in the pit of your stomach feeling, like this awful feeling in the pit of your stomach because there's nothing you can do about it.
I want to talk about how Godzilla looks. You like him?
Oh, I love how he looks. He looks derpy in a lot of scenes. And when we get full shots of him, I think he looks good. I think he moved really well for being, from the 50s. I didn't know it was a guy in a suit till you told me. And I think you told me while we were watching. And I guess before I thought he was claymated. So that makes more sense, him being a guy in a suit.
That'd be a pretty crazy claymation, actually. Yeah, and I think some of the close-ups, I think, are puppets. Because I just see, it just feels like a hand puppet in some of the shots.
I think the intro shot where we see Godzilla peeping over the mountain, the other side of the island, which is probably my favorite part of this movie. I think he's a puppet.
Okay.
He's a puppet then. And I think when he has those like big derpy eyes, when his eyes look the derpiest, I bet you that's the puppet. I don't know. I can't confirm if that's when he is the puppet, but just something tells me yes.
Yeah, there were definitely some moments where I'm like, damn, he's derpy looking, no doubt, because his proportions are all kinds of fucking out of whack. But again, it doesn't harm the film in any meaningful way because they capture something so silly in premise, but also somber and scary in such a quick, snappy way that you don't have a chance to really focus too much on his silly figure and stuff. But there are some shots when he's still and he's just kind of looking around. I'm like, damn. I hate to say it, but he looks pretty good.
Yeah,
He looks better than any fucking thing out of Avatar.
Especially for the time.
Yeah. And I couldn't, when I saw it a few times when I noticed the first time, I couldn't stop looking at it, but his like hip area where his legs meet the suit.
Yes.
You could see that flex a little bit when he was walking like a costume would. I was just like,
I love that.
I was like, this is all right. Why does this not? It's like I don't know. It's so funny. Like if you try as hard as Little Mermaid and you only produce shit, it's just it's totally unforgivable. When you do something like this and you craft something with so much love and passion, I mean, you can just put a guy in a suit and be really effective with it. It's crazy. Why am I okay with this guy in the suit and his weird flexing, like, or weird concavity in his legs, but I am definitely not okay with our live action Ariel's hair. Fuck that shit.
Yeah, how are you? Okay, Little Mermaid, that's recent, so that's even worse. But
I know.
Yeah.
Sad.
But how are you going to make A Christmas Carol and just drape a sheet over the Grim Reaper ghost?
I know.
Did you even try? I was reading that the suit was 220 pounds.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's a suit.
And then it got really hot.
I bet.
In there. The guy probably had to take several breaks, I bet.
That's why he wasn't moving fast. Especially because that shit was mostly around his legs.
Yeah, that tail.
Mm-hmm.
I also liked all the scenes when he was, being a big fat bully. And it was closer towards the end when everything is just destroyed and there's stuff on fire. And he kind of like looks back. And it's just this great scene of everything on fire and then just Godzilla looking at you. Like if he could smirk, he would smirk right there. Yeah. And I love it. I love how big of a fucking bully he is here. The lore we were given in the beginning said that he came out to eat people. When all the fish were whatever about the fish. And, he just came out to eat people. But when he came out, he didn't come out to eat people. I didn't see him eat one soul, I think. I saw him destroy. He's not hungry.
There's something lost in a lot of the Godzilla movies, just in general, but the recent ones do not embody that bulliness. I feel like we almost have a Godzilla who's a little bit of a protector of humanity, and I don't like that. I mean, I do kind of like that, but it's not going anywhere. I guess it didn't seem like it, at least, and I miss the bully nature, I guess.
Yeah, recent films make it seem like you see Godzilla and you're like, yes, Godzilla's here to save us, to save the world, whatever. Like a protector, like you said. But no, you should see Godzilla and just be fearful for your life. Godzilla is just to put it simply, Godzilla is a weapon. You don't see a weapon and cheer. You don't see a weapon and think it's coming to save me.
Yeah, especially if you know the origin of Godzilla too. I don't know how.
When did that get lost? Yeah.
I mean, I guess probably shortly after the Japanese probably killed that with the King of Monsters era. Yeah,
Millie Bobby Brown should not be bonding with Godzilla. No.
Does she do that?
I think she. I think she does. I don't know. Something tells me.
That's sick.
She falls
in a bad way. She falls in love?
She falls she falls in love with him. Like she needs to protect him. They're buddies. Which I thought was cute till I saw this and I'm like, "Oh my god, you have something way better here." What are you doing?
It's maybe even a little bit ironic for these massive American productions to paint Godzilla this way because Americans are the reason Godzilla ever came to be. Godzilla represents humans at their worst.
Yeah.
And we have kind of white knighted him in a way. It's kind of funny in a sad way.
Yeah, it's almost like they should have just made up their own kaiju. Like, if you were this inspired but wanted to go in a separate direction.
Well, we already kind of had that. King Kong.
Well, if you wanted King Kong to fight something.
Oh.
Yeah. Make something else. Yeah, I don't understand. Well, let me back that up. I understand. I like both, but just, I don't, you should have made them different, I guess. You should have made it.
It was irresistible, though, because we saw it again happen in the 80s and into the 90s with things like Freddy versus Jason. It's irresistible to put these things that like somehow make sense together, but not really, but make them fight each other. Alien versus Predator, you know?
Yeah.
Then we got, King Kong and Godzilla, plus all the other monsters, Mothra and King Ghidorah and stuff.
First you got Kong versus T-Rexes.
Yeah.
Don't forget about that. So yeah, all right. I mean, it is what it is. I enjoy them all.
For different reasons.
Yeah.
I hear that. I'm glad you like this movie. I think it's one of the few important films we've watched from this time period. Not that we've seen an awful lot, but
yeah, Godzilla is crazy important, crazy influential. He sparked, first of all, the giant monsters that everyone comes to love. I don't know if it's bold for me to say that he even sparked shark movies.
Sure. There may not have been a Jaws without Godzilla.
And he also sparked sci-fi movies having something to say. A social commentary on sci-fi movies, which I like that.
And the effects, the literal effects of the movie could not be overstated in their importance.
Yes.
Yeah, and I dare say Godzilla was a major, major player in nerd culture. Helped facilitate this fandom and franchise. Because I think, if I remember correctly, Godzilla is the longest running movie franchise.
Oh, wow. That makes sense. And Godzilla is he's still around. He didn't get lost. There's still Godzilla toys. Godzilla, I mean, yes, there's films coming out all the time, but this movie also has a big influence on the score and foley. Just how iconic is his roar.
And his theme song.
His theme song, I mean, I haven't seen many, but I'd be bold to say that his theme song is probably played with every Godzilla film to date.
I don't even know. I can't even remember in these recent American
or some version of it, yeah. I do like how a lot of the drums in the score sound like big heavy footsteps. And I like how when they're actually giving us Godzilla's footsteps, they sound like bombs. I don't know if you heard the same thing I did, but I like that. It was all very cohesive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the levels taken to tie in the symbolism that it can be read in multiple ways is nothing short of genius. I mean, again, that's one reason this film is forever going to live in a really kind of pulled apart place in my mind, because it's just unfortunate that it was just many years ahead of its time, and it's going to suffer because of that. But see, that's a little bit more of a reason to always praise a movie, something being ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
It's not just pioneering in many ways. It had something to say and knew exactly how to say it, but it wasn't possible to tighten some of the things to make it live forever.
Yeah.
In a complete form, I guess. It's because it will live forever in its messaging.
Yeah, I think if you can appreciate that, at least, this film is it's awesome. So I guess the last thing I want to talk about is the end. How did you feel about the whole end, when probably starting with the woman and the guy getting the eye patch dude to give them convincing him to use the the oxygen destroyer, and then them getting on the boat, both of them going down, one guy coming up, one guy sacrificing himself, and I'm sorry, but Godzilla turning into bones.
You didn't expect that, did you?
No.
Well, first of all, the worst part of the movie is in that mix where we get the reveal of the oxygen destroyer. That is just laughably bad. That was the worst shit I've ever seen in my life. That's, for some reason, they felt like that needed to be the climax. I don't know what that was. That's not
They
climax.
shouldn't have said it.
They shouldn't have said it. They shouldn't have shown us. They definitely shouldn't have shown us twice. You know, they showed us half of that, I guess, already, but they weren't going to let you forget that was, you know, such an essential part of what's to come. It kind of takes away the cinematic flair and steam of killing Godzilla, because we could have seen her face. That's it. Us seeing what that did to the fish, and then seeing her face, getting that kind of repetition, makes that shit beyond silly. But if we could have, you know, just seen her face, no fish, we didn't, you know, it was just implied something happened, then we see it played out. Her face now is the response to what happened to Godzilla, you know? There could be. So it's just like, it got kind of in its way, I feel like.
Yes, it brought down the effect of the first time.
Yeah.
How dramatic that was. It definitely brought that scene down a bit. Did the science behind the oxygen destroyer annoy you at all? Like it did me? Because the point of it is to take out all the oxygen, I guess, from the water, leaving the fish to suffocate. So why did Godzilla turn into bones?
I mean, why did the fish turn into bones?
Why did the fish turn into bones? Yes. Also, I didn't think about this till I saw someone very nicely point it out online. Godzilla can breathe on land and underwater.
Well, I think, and this may have been a translation problem, and it just no one ever thought to fix it, but your blood is mostly oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe it basically boils you. It boils the immediate area of where this thing is being detonated. And so all oxygen from all walks of molecules, this, you know, it is fucking, they vaporize.
Yeah, okay, that would make more sense.
So I think that's what was supposed to be happening. Hence the dissolving of flesh. But yeah, it is, the explanation is no doubt silly. And I don't know why, but it's just silly enough that I just can't help but to think that's a translation problem.
It has to be.
Oxygen Destroyer. Stupid ass name. First of all, okay? So it doesn't sound that bad in Japanese. I can guarantee it. That's all I'm saying.
No, that's a very fair point. I guess it destroyed him to bone, so he couldn't have held his breath, but yeah. It shouldn't have destroyed him into bones. And he should have been able to hold his breath and just kind of pop out of the water and be like, I can breathe outside, bitches. That would have been a whole different meaning to the end.
That's the sequel.
That's the sequel.
Yeah. We gotta watch the sequel now, the immediate sequel, just to see how Godzilla's reintroduced. But there's a whole land of Godzillas or something. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't seen them all. I've seen a lot of them, but I haven't seen them all.
Well, I think the old doctor said, if we keep nuclear testing around the water, more Godzillas are going to come out.
Yeah, but...
So I wonder if that's what...
they run with?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's a fun point, actually, because that's symbolically kind of implies this demon from your past that never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a Godzilla in your closet, you know? Can you keep them in there? I don't know. So they run with the physical side of Godzilla in the many sequels to come, which is cool. I mean,
yeah,
it's kind of funny how this movie was influential in its own way, but the next, you know, 15 of them would go on to be even more influential in some way because of the nerd culture impact and the merchandising impact and the anime cartoon impact. Godzilla, man, maybe a little undersung in its importance to humanity.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is even funnier because it's such a symbol of commercialism now that's also this demon that lives within us all, you know? So it's kind of evolved into a more modern form of terrible things humans are capable of.
Yeah. I do like that the end of the movie, you know, nobody cheered. Nobody said, "Yay, we finally got him." Like probably an American movie would.
Yes.
Nobody's celebrating. It just, oh my god, it just keeps adding to the dark tone here.
Yeah.
Just the consequences of all our actions, whether you see it from the point of view of Godzilla or the humans.
I like what you were saying because it's not something to cheer for. They're losing part of themselves. This, yes, might be a big scary monster, but to them, but at the same time, it's a representation of who they used to be, and in some degrees still are, and they're being forced in some way to change. And so it's anything but a celebratory moment because they're losing part of themselves. They're being forced to in some way by themselves.
Yeah. And this is also where some of the consequences of science speaks to me, because we're losing this majestic animal that's one of its kind, and you know, we destroyed it. I know that's not really the symbol that they're going for in the film, but we see sparks of it here that, you know, this is an animal from the, I think he said Jurassic period, which I'm sure there's a whole thing there about what period it's actually supposed to be from or whatever, but that's not important. Just the loss of a scientific thing that could have been studied, or that could have been just the relationship that humans have with science.
I like that because it only demonstrates this need for humans to be in control in some way. And when something threatens that, whether no matter how big or small, it runs the risk of throwing an entire culture into jeopardy. And so there's a little bit of a Night of the Living Dead Frankenstein kind of thing happening there, where we have to kill what we don't understand.
Yeah, and the consequences that our actions have to our planet, to nature. Yeah. I do appreciate all the comparisons they did with the human scenes after Godzilla destroys everybody and they come in contact with, his radiation. And we see a lot of the humans that are hurt or burned or whatever. And just kind of that comparison with some of the stuff I've seen with the World War II victims.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a literal kind of cause and effect there.
Mm-hmm.
The layers of
this
movie.
I love that. I love that we have the screaming kids. We have the burned kids, people laying, you don't know if they're dead or alive. That scene where the mom is hugging her kids and telling them, we're off to see daddy in heaven. What? Excuse me? That's heartbreaking. That's awesome. This movie's too good. It's too good. That's why I can forgive all the bad edits. Like when the girl is starting to get up and all of a sudden she's up and halfway down the hall, really.
Yeah. And it's worth noting, just in general for old movies, you couldn't film and film and film and film like you can today digitally. Even now still, film reels cost a lot of money. And when you're in the 1950s, there's not... The Disneys and the Warner Brothers of the world don't exist like they do today. This stuff is expensive for any studio and production company at the time to take part in, especially in Japan. So they are, in a way, kind of working with what they really got. They aren't trying to perfect it because they can't.
Mm-hmm.
They've really got maybe one or two takes in them, and that's it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You hear about movies today going across the finish line with 50 hours of footage. 2-hour movie, hour and a half movie, 50 hours of footage before editing, right? It really begs the question, did you have a vision at all? Okay, if you took the same take 25, 30, 35 times, okay, your actors probably hate you, first of all, but that's something. There's something auteur and very control freaky about that that I can maybe get on board with. But if you've got multiple movies within that 50 hours because of how you can edit it and stuff, it's just like, I don't know if you should have ever made that thing.
Yes.
You did. It sounds like you had no vision to begin with.
Yes.
You definitely didn't have vision at the end if you had 50 hours kind of thing. So, and I not to just, I don't mean to just say that to bring some kind of appreciation to old films, but there is something to be said there about something being a little more deliberate at the time. And even though I don't like, To Kill a Mockingbird, knowing that kind of thing puts it in a different light. It just still doesn't make that movie good, but it can help kind of justify some questionable decisions, for sure.
I like that. You hear that? You have no excuse.
Today
you have no excuse.
No.
You just suck.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, thank you for watching this movie with me.
You're welcome. Thank you for making me watch this, finally. Now I feel like I gotta go get a Godzilla tattoo or something.
You gotta
represent.
You gotta represent. I like that. Godzilla's always been kind of special to me in a very tangential way. I don't like the modern movies. I don't like a lot of the monster fighter movies either. There's something nostalgic about them that I like. Had a friend back in the day. He had all the VHSs and, I'd borrow them, watch them and everything. I was real into that. But there's something a little deeper within like the original, this original Godzilla that hits home with me in a really special way. But yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I really am. That's good stuff. I'm glad to be proven. Now, I can't really say yet again, but once more that old movies are not terrible. Because I am very rarely impressed by old movies, like in a really interesting way, like 12 Angry Men. 12 Angry Men's one of the greatest movies ever made.
Yes.
Should that be enough to justify the whole decade? Nah.
Hell no.
Yeah. We're still struggling today, so I guess this is worth saying most movies all the time suck. It's all decades, so maybe that's to help justify that the 50s really aren't any different from today. But yeah. But yeah, man, thank you. Thank you for talking about it here today.
Thank you.
Do you have a budget guess?
I do, which is just pulled out of my brain. 50,000. I mean, look, this is an old film. It's Japanese. The guy's in a suit. I have no idea, but you have toy helicopters. That was probably like 2 pennies at the time. So I don't know. I have no clue.
Yeah.
No idea.
I feel like that's actually a pretty good guess. Because that would, in today's money, I think that would be about 570,000. And it says here that the budget was 100 million yen, which today would look like about 600 million yen, which is about $4.2 million. It's actually a little more expensive than I thought it was going to be.
But still, it's still not a lot compared to, big timers.
For sure, yeah.
Oh, good job, Ishirō. Good job, Ishirō.
Honda. Because it's...
Dang, no excuses.
No excuses for modern movies one bit. These $100 million budgets. I like Oppenheimer. Don't get me wrong. That's not a $100 million movie. I'm just saying. And don't get me started on Disney nonsense. So,
nope.
Yeah. So it says here on Letterboxd that the general consensus score, right, is 4.0 out of 5.
Wow. It's fairly loved.
It's very loved.
Good. It deserves it. Deserves all the love. Yeah, I wrote down 3.5.
Very nice.
Very, very good. What would you give it? A 1? Oh, it's very good. I'll give it a 1.
No,
If you say half, I'm walking out of here.
No, it's definitely not a half.
Okay.
Not many movies are halves.
Good.
I gave it a 2.5.
Okay.
So.
Okay, that's very fair for you. Good job.
Yeah, and it's being forced. That number is squeezed out of the balance between the things that just don't age well and the really amazing things. So, maybe if I was back in the 50s, had Letterboxd, and we were just making movies and shit, this movie may have been like a 4.0 for me or something. So
that's fair. Very fair.
Because I would say the high points are probably 4.0 territory for me out of 5, and then the low points are 1.5. And then that one scene with the car, toy, and the helicopter, that shit's like half. It really is. So like it knocks it down. Just it's a little bit of a balance happening there. But yeah, no, after watching it after so long, but it always being in my mind, Godzilla, the premise of Godzilla lives in my mind rent free. Always has since I was born. I'm really proud for it to like always been there. I think it's well deserved. I like Godzilla a lot. So yeah. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Filmsteins. Remember, you can catch us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for brand new episodes of the Filmsteins over on patreon.com/Filmsteins, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, all the goods. Leave nice reviews, comments, likes, tell your grandma.
Please tell your grandma.
Grandmas are good. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Filmsteins. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed our discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/Filmsteins, and follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching, keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmsteins, signing off.
Oh, that one was good.